So yeah, my name is Sushant. I'm from Maharashtra. I have completed my master degree in computer science from IIT Bombay. Data structure and algorithm has been my favorite topic in software engineering. So that's about me. I'll start with the slides now. Can anyone guess what this image is? Okay, you may have heard about fractal patterns. So this is one of the fractal patterns. You find it in Snowflake that you keep zooming on the structure, you will find the same pattern again and again. So yeah, it is related to recursion, and it's called fractal pattern. There are other images also, like there is this one tree. So it is a binary tree. So what binary trees represent in dynamic programming? Can anybody guess what does binary tree represent, or any tree, NRE tree represent in dynamic programming? Yeah, so it represent exponential growth. In many problems, you have to search the whole space of the solutions. So it represent the exponential growth, so that you have to go deep till the leaf node and check out each node that whether this is a best solution or not. There are other images also, like this is one tabulation image. When you are performing a dynamic programming solution, you many times you get a matrix kind of structure, or like a single array or three-dimensional array. It depends on the problem. And in the bottom, can anybody guess what is this recurrence relation? Yeah, some people have answered the question. It's a Fibonacci, yeah, and you can see the sequence also at the bottom. So this is a Fibonacci sequence. It can be solved using dynamic programming. If you want to go without caching mechanism, it will go to exponential complexity. So I'll move on to the another slide. So I'll just cover broad overview of what is dynamic programming is. So, what is DP? In my sense, I think like DP is just a brute force algorithm with caching mechanism. This is the simplest I can go for time programming. Then there are like various mechanisms that you can use to solve a dynamic programming problem. You'll always find that there will be always a brute force method involved, and there must be some caching to reduce the complexity. So brute force method on itself will go to some exponential complexity, or maybe some higher complexity levels that you can't use that program in real time. To use that program in real time, you need some caching mechanism. So this is a definition on Wikipedia. So it is a method for solving complex problems by breaking it down into collection of simpler subproblems, solving each other subproblem just once, and storing their solution. So this is some detailed version of the same thing that I told you. Ideally using memory-based data structure. So why do we need DP? So DB is a way to perform brute force complete search of a solution space with the addition of caching, that is like memorization or tabulation. Yeah, so this is the one that I'm talking about. When you solve any competitive programming problem, or any general problem in computer science, there will always be a trade-off between space and time. If you don't want to use space, so you have to use like more time, and if you want to reduce your time complexity, then you have to increase your space complexity. So there will be always a trade-off. There are like optimal solutions for some problem where you can minimize the space and time complexity both, but you will find that there will always be some trade-off between space and time. For example, you might be able to exchange exponential complexity, like a tree-based solution that is like a tree that is growing exponentially. You can reduce the time complexity using some caching mechanism, and you can reduce like time complexity from exponential to n square. But you have to do a sacrifice in space. You have to use some space to store the result. And many times we get confused with the greedy method. We read a problem and we think that a greedy approach can solve that problem, but it's not always optimal. It can give optimal result sometimes, but it may not be optimal all the time. One technique to guess whether the problem is greedy or dynamic programming is that if the problem can be solved using some sequencing in the start, like if you read the problem and you think that if I sort the input in some fashion and use the first or the last input, that will be my solution, then problem may be greedy. But after reading the problem, if you think that you have to search through whole solution space, that you have to look at each and every solution, then it might be a DP problem. Yeah, so DP tends to be used for most of the optimization problems as well as combinatorial problems. So DP is gets used a lot in mathematics domain where there is like permutation and combination. So what are the DP approaches? Can anybody tell me? Or yeah, top down is one method. Bottom up is what? What is the name for the each method? Does anybody know? Like, what is the term we use in computer science? Yeah, tabulation. Tabulation is one what is called top down, bottom up. You go from bottom to up. That is tabulation, and if you go from top to down, that is memoization. So this is tabulation. You go from bottom to up, and memoization you go from top to down. So I'll explain what tabulation is. So it's an iterative approach to constructing all subproblems for the given problem, starting with the base case. So you have to actually you have to calculate the base case in both memoization and tabulation. In tabulation, you can do it iteratively. So you figure out the base case and you try to build the whole table from that base case. Yeah, so it is usually fast with some overhead because you do it iteratively. You don't have to write a recursive function for this. You can do using loops or.
Yeah, Shashank, I have a doubt. Okay, so in tabulation and memoization, in both approaches, do we use spaces in both approaches, or we do use only spaces in only in tabulation method?
No, both the methods uses some space, but what tabulation method does is like you have to declare the whole matrix or array first, because you will know that you have to fill that whole table. And once you fill that whole table, then you can just output the result based on the input. In memoization also, you will have to use an array, but you don't have to fill that array completely. It depends on the input. The input will come, then you will perform some recursive calculation and try to fill the that array, and it will get filled again and again depending on the input.
Okay, so if I understood correctly, so if you take example of Fibonacci series, right?
Yeah.
So if you do calculate Fibonacci, so every time you don't calculate, to get the next value, right? So
yeah.
You will be storing. So once you calculate that value, then you will be storing in some kind of memory form, right? Yeah. That's what you're trying to say.
I'll explain regarding the Fibonacci. So okay. Say you have a problem. You have to calculate the nth Fibonacci number. So and the limit on that number is 100. So we will only have to calculate any number from 1 to 100, right? So first Fibonacci number is 1, then 2, then 3, then 5, then 8, right? So that sequence. So what you will do is in tabulation method, you will create an array and you will fill that array with all the Fibonacci numbers. And whenever the input comes, like you want the 50th Fibonacci number, so it will just throw out the result. In memoization, what we will do, you will get the input 50 first, use a recursive function to calculate the previous value, like the 49th, then 48th, and you will fill the table from 1 to 50th and then return the result. But if the next input is like 30, you already have the result. So you will throw out that result. But if the next input is 70, then you will perform the calculation again from 70 to 50. That you will fill those values again, and then throw out the result.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
So there is one method called memoization. It's called a top-down approach because you think in a way. Say a Fibonacci recurrence, you will know that you can calculate next value by using current value and the previous value. So you will always try to think that way, and you can write recursive solution easily. I use this method a lot. Like memoization is directly implementing what is the problem in C. So this technique always uses a recursion function and it solves a problem from top to down approach. So for a specific input, you may have to go to a specific path in the tree. Usually, most of the problems in dynamic programming, if you can imagine it, it will create a tree kind of data structure. So once you get the input, if you want to break it down to multiple inputs, like multiple sub problems, it will break down till you get a solution. So it kind of forms a tree, and you have to travel a path to that tree. So in memorization problem, for each input you have to travel only one path, while in tabulation you have to travel all the paths. I'll explain all those when I'm solving a problem. So this is just a theory part. So these are the difference between tabulation and memorization. So what is this? So state. So when you're getting an input, like say for Fibonacci, you want to calculate a 50th Fibonacci sequence. So for that sequence, you have to calculate the previous two, right? You have to get the value of 49th and 48th to calculate the 50th answer. So that is your state. So like 50th is one state, 49 is one state, 48 is one state. Then for 49, you have to calculate 48 and 47. For 48, you have to calculate 47 and 46. So these become your state. So each nodes in the tree becomes your states. So how state transition looks like, it's harder to think in tabulation method, while it's very easy in memorization, because it's basically what problem is saying. If you are given a Fibonacci problem, they will also tell that what is the recurrence relation, like how the Fibonacci sequence is formed. It's formed from adding previous two values. So you can just use that logic in your recursion function, and you can build the whole solution very fast and easily. Code gets complicated when lot of conditions are required. Yeah, so there are some problems that which require a lot of condition, like longest increasing subsequence problem. There is one longest increasing subsequence, which when we are giving two strings, you have to find the longest increasing subsequence in that string. So in that problem, there are a lot of conditions like if and else conditions. When you're coding using a memorization method, you can easily code it, because all the condition will be given in the problem. You just have to implement those conditions in your recursive function and then come up with the result. While in tabulation, you have to scratch your head a little bit so that you come up with the condition. In regarding of the speed, tabulation method usually works faster because it doesn't use recursion. It can use recursion. It depends on you how you implement it. But tabulation method usually does not require recursion method to fill the whole table. While in memorization, you will use the recursion and then keep on filling the table as you get some input. And these recursive calls can add overhead on your program, and it can use a lot of memory, and maybe this recursion calls can take some overhead, and it can also increases your time complexity. And not it doesn't increases your complexity, but it can take more time. Yeah, so sub problem solving. So what kind of sub problem these both measures solve? So if all the sub problem must be solved at least once, the bottom up dynamic programming algorithm usually outperform the top down memorization algorithm by constant factor. Question like, say for Fibonacci, you know that the input is going to come is 100 and your limit is 100, that you have guarantee that all the sequence needs to be filled before giving the output. Then tabulation method will perform better than memorization. And if some subproblems in subproblem space need to be solved at all, the memorization solution has the advantage of solving those subproblems that are definitely required. If you want to search the whole subproblem space, then it's better to use tabulation method. And if the problem requires that you may not have to use all the subproblem space, then it's better to use memorization method. Table entries in the tabulation version, starting from the first entry, all the entries are filled one by one. So like for a Fibonacci sequence, you will fill the first sequence, then second sequence, then third sequence. So you will keep on building the array depending on the previous two values. So it's pretty easy and it doesn't require like a lot of calculation. Unlike the tabulation version, all the entries for the lookup table are not necessarily filled in memorization table, and the table filled on the demand. So there is one answer I found on Quora. So So you write down 1 plus 1 till 8 times on a sheet of paper. Then you try to calculate what the value of that expression is. You can easily count those number and say it is equal to 8. And then I said that you add 1 on the left side. So now what is it is equal to? So you say that 9. So you just added 1 more, right? You didn't calculate. You didn't count it all the numbers again. Like there are 9 ones. You already had calculated 8 value, and then you added just 1 to it, and you calculated 9. So you didn't need to recount because you remembered there were 8 value already there, and you just added 1. So this is what actually dynamic programming is. So there are some steps to solving dynamic programming problem. So first step is to recognize the problem is dynamic problem or not. I usually think that all the problem has to be solved using dynamic programming, and then I try to think whether it can be solved with some easier method or not. Identify the problem variables. Clearly express the recurrence relations like in the Fibonacci. Identify the base case. This is very important in both memoization and tabulation method. You have to identify where your program will end. In tabulation method, you have to find the base case where the loop will start. You have to find the base case for that. While in memoization, you have to find the base case for where the recurrence relation will end. Decide if you want it implement iteratively or recursively. Basically, do you want to use tabulation or memoization? Add memoization and tabulation. So first you write a recursive program. If you are using like memoization, you may not use caching at the first. You just write an exponential complexity program, and then you can add memoization or tabulation on your program and determine time complexity. There are some tips and tricks. So check out what transition look like. How do you transit from one state to another state? Like in Fibonacci, you have to use previous to result to get the current result. So that is your transition. You transit from current state to next state by using addition of 2 states. Can you identify a recurrence relation? What is the base case for the recurrence relation? What is your state? What combination of values and index compose of your state? Like longest common subsequence, you have 2 strings, so you have 2 variables that iterate through each string. To identify DP problem, if the problem statement starts with how many or count the number of, most likely you are dealing with pure math problem, a complete search problem, or a dynamic programming problem. So usually the problem starts with maximize something or minimize something, or how many ways there to do that, or count the number of paths in the tree, something like that.
Yes, Sushant, I have a doubt here.
Yeah.
So, for example, take a Fibonacci sequence, right?
Yeah.
So let's say I have written the program, right, and I am solving that through recursion. Okay, I'm not storing any values in that program.
Yeah.
So, so in that solution, do you say that okay, it is a DP problem in that situation where I'm not storing any values anywhere? I'm just using a regression, normal regression.
Okay, so yeah, so it depends on the problem. Say that your Fibonacci problem has only one input. That there will be some input.
Let's say you wanted to get the 10th number in the sequence.
So say your program only has a one input. In that case, you don't need to use DP because there won't be any another call. But say there are multiple inputs, like there are 10 inputs or 20 inputs. So there may be first input that is 100. You calculate all the values from 1 to 100, and then again there is another input which says 50. Now for that 50 input, you have to perform the calculation again. Like from 0 to 50, you have to calculate those values again. So it would be better if you store those values and use those values again. And when there is another input like 200, you have to only calculate from value from 101 to 200. So that is the dynamic programming. That is actually caching mechanism. It's called dynamic programming because of the caching mechanism. If the problem doesn't involve a caching mechanism, then it won't be a dynamic programming solution. So make your array, that is table or whatever the tabulation or memoization data structure you are using, make it a little bit larger than the input, assume you already know the optimal solution for the 0 to k, then how can the solution from 0 to k help you to compute k plus 1? So when you are using memoization method or you are using a recursive call, you should think in this way that you have already solution for the value for 99 and 99. Now how you will calculate the value for 100th? Yeah, if you want to recover the which subproblem led to the solution, you often need to use another table or memory. So this is some problem specific statement. So those were the slides. I'll move to the problem solving section. Somika has string s and its starting index is 1. The string s consists of character from 1 to 9. As she is very intelligent, she wants this test for his brother Vinay. She asks her brother Vinay to count the number of even numbered characters. So you have to count the even number of characters in a string for every index one, from every index I, which is between 1 to length of s. For an index I, the result should be calculated from I to the end of the string. So basically for this input, if you can see this input 5746, so you have to calculate the number of even numbers from I to the end of the string. So like if the I is 0 and end of the string, the length is here, there are 12 characters in the string. So from 0 to 12, how many even numbers are there? If you count it, you will get that there are 7 even numbers. From 1 to 12, how many are there? There are still 7. From 2 to 12, there are still 7. But from 3 to 12, there is one less. That there is only 6 even numbers because we have removed 4. So you have to calculate like that and print the solution like 7, 7, 7, then 6, then 5, 5, 4. So you can see that there is repetition, that if you code this problem directly, you can use exponential solution also, that one loop will go from 0 till 12, and in that loop you will perform a counting operation which will which will count this even number of values. But as I told you, you can see the subproblems also here, that if you have already calculated the even numbers for the complete string, then you don't have to calculate the even numbers for complete string again. You can just calculate like if the I is at 3, on the left there is only one even number. So you can just subtract that even number from the complete even numbers in the string. I usually use Python for solving computer problem. The syntax is very easy and you don't have to code a lot. You don't have to remember any libraries or methods. It's pretty intuitive, I'll say. You can use any language, it's up to you. But if you want my suggestion that which language should you use for a computer program, I will always recommend Python. So for the problem, you have to take an input. The input is a string. So let's just say s is equal to input. So this will read input from your console and it will store it in s. You have to go through the string, so there is not much processing that is involved. You can just start with your recursive function, maybe count even. So now the important part is what variables this function requires. So you definitely require s, you need s, then what other variables it can require, this function require, you have to think about that. Can anybody tell me what other variables I need? Yeah, index I. This problem here, it talks about some index I, that for index I, the result should be calculated from I to the end of the string. That means you only have to consider that much string and then calculate the result. So we definitely require an index I which will traverse through the string. So let's just declare a variable I, and you'll see whether we require some more variables or not. So what I want is to calculate a base condition for this. So can anybody tell me what base condition for this problem is? Yeah, the position in the string. Yeah, the I is actually the position. When you reach the length of the string, yeah, that is one, that will be a base condition. So if the I reaches the length of the S, then you basically terminate your recursive program. You don't have to go any further. So just add the base condition here. If I is equal to length of s. Okay, you have reached the length of the string. At that point, there are no even numbers. There are like basically no letters in the string. So the count will always be a zero. So you just return the zero. So base condition, what it tells you, like in software engineering, we have something called boundary value analysis. So if you wrote a program on some boundary values, what will be the output of that program? Now you have calculated the values from 0 to k. Now assume that k is 0. Now say k plus 1. So that is 1. If the string only has one letter and I is at 0, that means you only have to calculate one letter value and you don't have to worry about remaining string. So just think about that. Like if there is only one letter in the string, what will be the output? Either output can be a 0 or 1, depending on whether that letter is even or not, whether that number is even or not, right? So I'll just write that condition. So return 1 if s of I, right? So I is the index, s is a string, is an even number. So 0 is a even, okay. Then 2 is even, then 4, then 6. I'm just writing in this way because it's a string. I don't want it to convert to integer because that's extra overhead. Else 0. Return 1 if it is even, or else 0. I have calculated for a empty string and the string with only one letter. Now just add a k plus 1. Say if there are two letters in the string, what could be the output? So what I will do, I will add it in a bracket. So depending on that letter, whether should it be 1 or a 0, depending on whether it's even or odd. And then I'll make a recursive call. So count even. So we definitely need to pass a string and then index. So we have already calculated for this index. We need to go forward. So we will just add 1 to this I, and that will be our recursive call. Right. Usually, most of the dynamic programming problems follows these path. You will write a recursive. You will just write a function, then write a base case, and then write a recursive call with some calculation. So this is our recursive call here. You can see this is a recursive call, and this is a operation that you want to perform on that particular number. So the problem says find if it is even or not. If it is even, then add 1. If it is not, then add 0. So it's pretty easy. So let's just print. That does it print. We need to call count even. So we pass the string and then we will pass the first index. First index will be 0. We will just pass. So the recursive function will start from 0. Then it will go further and further. Let's see if this will give us output or not. It says 1, your output of the code is, because we need to calculate it from I 0 till the length of the s. It's not just from the 0. So I have to add a for loop here. Let's for I in range length of s. So this I will go from 0 till 11 and it will calculate the values. So I'm still getting 777 output. That means I have done something wrong. Can anybody tell what is wrong? It's here. I have used the 0 index and let's see if the output is correct. So we have got the correct output. See, if the result is wrong because I haven't formatted it, I'll format it. But the output is correct. So you can see 777, then 6, then 5, 5, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is the output. This is the expected output. I just need to format it and should be a space instead of a new line. So that is our correct output. See, in this problem, I haven't used the memoization or the caching mechanism yet. Let's try to submit. Can anybody tell why there is runtime error? So there is a default recursion limit set that your call can't go further than that recursion limit. You have to set it again. You won't be able to request like more than 100 or 1000. So because the input here can be 10 raised to power 4, so let's just exceed our recursion limit till then and see if our problem works or not. So we got solution and now this is running. Yeah. So that runtime error gone because it was coming because of this recursion limit. I have removed that recursion limit and added a new value. So the depth of the recursion can go till now 10,000. And because of that, we got an time limit exceeded error. So we haven't implemented any caching mechanism like tabulation or memorization. We need to implement that because we are not storing the intermediate values. The recursion is going for every input. So because this loop will go from 0 till length of s, so for each index it is calculating value that those value again. Even though we have already calculated a value for index 1000, when the input from 1001 comes, we will calculate the values again from 0 to 1000, and we are not storing those values. So just declare a table. This give some default value. I usually give minus 1 so that I can check whether that value has been filled or not, and declare the size. So we already have a limit here that is 10 raised to power 4. So just give that limit to here. So we have declared a table. Now we just need to fill the value here. So instead of returning this value, just fill that value in the table. So string will be the same. The only thing that is changing is the index. So in the index, write this value. So you store the value table in the table and just now return this value. So now you are returning that value. Now the thing is that even though you are returning that value, this statement comes before this statement. The calculation of the table value, it comes before the returning of that table value. You need to check whether that value in the table has been already calculated or not. So just after the base condition, add a check here. If table, so check whether if this table has been filled already. If it is not equal to -1, so the default value is -1. So if that call has came before, that means we have already calculated this value and then return this value, and this call is coming again. If that value is already filled, that means it not equal to -1. That means the call has came before. Then you just return table whatever the value there is. You don't need to go further and calculate that value. You don't need to use this statement to calculate the value, and you don't need to make a recursive call. You just end your recursion here. So this is the structure of a typical dynamic programming problem. You will define a function first, then define a base case, and then define a recursive call, right? So these three things you definitely need. This is a base condition. So after a base condition, add whether this problem is already solved or not. So whether there is an overlap, we call it overlap. If there is an overlap, that means this function has been called before with the same values, the same string, the same index. That means there is overlap. So you don't need to go any further, just return the value from here. Don't need to recurse or do anything. If this condition is false, that means that call is new. That means you need to calculate it. So for calculation, let's just call it calculation. Right. So this is a calculation, and then return that value. Just write calculation. Let's see if this runs or not. Or is there any? Okay, this will run. Let's submit it. So we got all the test cases pass, and even which test cases had maybe like a bigger input, like a longer input, like 1000 10,000 character string, it still took very less time. See, it only took 0.1 second. Let's see the length of the string. What is the input of the string here? So see, this is a string. I don't know what is the length of this, but this is pretty big string. And for this string, it's also calculated in 0.1. Okay, let's move on to next problem here. So this is a little difficult than the previous problem. So Panda is a fond of numbers. Given a number, he subtract it with the square of any particular digit from that number. So you have a number, say number is 13. Then what Panda does is like it tries to subtract from that number the square of the digit. So it will try to subtract, say, so there is 13. It will try to subtract 1 square, so you will get 12, and it try to subtract 3 squared, so you will get 4. Yeah, so in this operation, you will get a number. You have to subtract that number from the square of any digit of those number, and you have to perform this operation again and again till you arrive at a pandiatic number. What is a pandiatic number here? A pandiatic number is a number which can be expressed in the form of a raised to power a. So the pandiatic number will be whatever the number that is a raised to power a. So like 1 raised to power 1 is 1, 2 raised to power 2 is 4. So 4 is a pandiatic number. 3 raised to power 3 is 27. 27 is a pandiatic number. In most of the programming problems, you will have input like this. So first will be the test case number, and then it will follow a list of the number that for each number you have to calculate the output. So there are 3 numbers here. So first number is 1. From 1 you can reach a pandiatic number because itself is a pandiatic number. You don't have to use any operation. 1 is a pandiatic number. From 3 you can't arrive at any pandiatic number. So the only operation you can perform on 3 is 3 minus 3 square. So you will get minus 6. And once you get into the negative number territory, there is no coming back. So you can think it as your base condition that once you reach below 0, there is no coming back. So just end your recursion there. And for 13, let's try what you can do. There is explanation here. 13 is not a pandiatic number, so you will perform some operations. So you will perform one subtraction of 1 square, so you will get 12. 12 is not a pandiatic number. Then there is another operation that you can perform, 3 square. So 3 square, 9, you can subtract it from the 13, and it is a pandiatic number. If it wasn't a pandiatic number, you can recurse on the 12, because the problem says that you can use this operation as many as times. This operation can be applied any number of times, possibly 0 also. So what I'll do, I'll try to calculate the pandiatic numbers. I don't think there are more than 8 pandiatic numbers there, because the limit is a raised to power 6, and there may be very less a raised to power a numbers. I'll just try to calculate those numbers. So I'll write pandiatic numbers. So for those, I will write I raised to power I, that is a raised to power a. Let's just say a raised to power a here. For a in range 10. Let's say 10, because I know that 10 raised to power 10 is like pretty bigger than this 10 raised to power 6. So let's just calculate 10 numbers for this. So this array will have 10 pandiatic numbers. I can just print it for you. I'll just print it, like which pandiatic numbers are there. Let's just try to run this program. See, there are which pandiatic numbers. So it also actually calculated for 0. For 0, 0 raised to power 0 is 1 there. Yeah, this mass. Yeah, so there is 1 raised to power 1, 2 raised to power 2, 4, 3 raised to power 3 is 27, 4 raised to power 4, this number is there, 5 raised to power 5, 6 raised to power 6, 7 raised to power 7, and I guess this is the limit, and you won't get any number bigger than this because the limit is 10 raised to power 6. So these two numbers won't be used, but let's keep it in the this. So we have already calculated which are the pandiatic numbers, and let's see if the input, the number like this, can be reduced to these numbers. Let's just try to write a program. I'll take input. So T is my input, for test. Then I will run a loop. In range. So first input I'm getting is number 3, and then I'll get 3 numbers. I need to take an input all those numbers. So n is our number. Let's just cast it into int. So we got the input. Now we just need to say whether this number is pandatic number or not. So we are going to go create a function. I'll just print it here. Print is pandatic. That will be our function name, pandatic. And we will pass n here. Now we just need to write a recursive function. So def is pandatic. We'll get n here. So what were the base condition? Can anybody tell me what should be the base condition here? Yeah, check for the negative numbers. Yeah, that is correct. So let's check for the negative numbers. If n is less than 0, I think even 0 is not a pandatic number, so let's just skip the 0 and let's check whether the n is less than 1 or not. So in the base condition, I told you that you can just return whatever the output of the program you want. Now this program only requires output as yes or no. What is the data structure for yes and no only? Can anybody guess? Yeah, Boolean. So we can use a Boolean data structure that is true, false. So for yes, that will be true. For no, that will be false. So if the base condition is getting hit, that means we are going in the negative territory. So just return a false. Yeah, so then we need to perform a calculation on that number, right? So need to calculate new number and then make a recursive call on the remaining numbers. So if the root node of the tree is 13, you can have 2 children of this 13, right? So one children will be 12, that is calculated using subtracting 1 square, and the another children will be 4, that is calculated by subtracting 3 square, right? And then that tree can go further. 12 will have 2 children. So one is calculated by subtracting 1 square, and then another one which will be calculated using 2 square. And it can go further. You want only one value that should be true. There could be multiple true values, but we are talking about if there is only one true value, that means our output should be true. What is the operation for that? So this is a OR operation. If you perform an OR operation on multiple Boolean values, even if one true value is there, it will return true. So we want to perform an OR operation here. So in Python, what you can do is there is an operation called any. Any means if any Boolean value is true, it will return a true. That means any if true, it will return a true. Any takes an array, so just start an array. Now we need to make a recursive call here. Is pandatic. Okay, is pandatic. Now we need to jump to the next state, right? So now we are at n state. The next state will be subtracting some digit from it, right? I will calculate that digit in the loop variable. I'll say it is int digit, and it is squared, right? It is squared for digit in strn. So what I'm doing here is I'm converting number to a string, so I can traverse through the digit of those string, and it will have value here in the is pandemic call. So I will convert it back to the int and take a square of it. I will subtract it from the 1 and make a is pandatic call again. So if any of these is true, then it should return true. There is one condition I forgot to add. You don't have to traverse when the digit is 0, because if you want to square a 0 digit, that will be 0 again, and the state would change. You always need to jump from one state to another state. You can't jump that state back again, because it will go till infinite. So just add one condition: if digit is not equal to 0, right? 0. So traverse all the digit in the value and make a recursive call only when the digit is not 0. We forgot to add when we return true. So can anybody tell? That is another base condition. So we need to check if n in pentatonic numbers or not. If n is in pentatonic numbers, that means you have reached on a pentatonic numbers. That means you need to return a true value. So there are two base conditions for false value. That means you have reached somewhere that you can't come back from, and true value. That means you have reached the leaf node of a tree. This is a true node. This is a correct value. This is a pentatonic number. You can return from here. Let's just see if this gives us any. There is some compilation error. It's return false. Oh, there is no if condition. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, we got an another error. Str object cannot be interpreted as integer. So where is this coming from? It is coming from line 9. Oh, we need to cast it into end. Input by default it reads as a string. It's saying no wrong answer, but because we are directly printing the boolean value, but you can see it is correct. Like true is for yes, false is no, and true is yes. We just need to add some string here. So print yes if is pendatic, else so this is passed. Let's just submit. I know that because we haven't used any caching mechanism, it's definitely going to. Okay, this is a runtime error. I think I haven't set the recursion limit. Let's just set the recursion limit from here. Here it will require a higher recursion limit, I think, because the recursion could be, yeah, it could be 10 raised to the power 6 because each time it can subtract only 1 from the number and it will go till to 10 raised to the power 6. So let's just add 1, 2, 3. Let's just set this limit. So we are getting time exceeded on these two cases and runtime error on these. Okay, let's just see. I have added a recursion limit, modified the recursion limit. Let's see whether we can. Okay, it's still coming as a runtime error. That means it's not a recursion limit error. Can anybody guess what this error is? Why are we getting? This is a segmentation error. What usually the segmentation errors involves? Out of bound, yeah, out of bound it could be, but out of bound you will get out of bound error. Basically it won't be any segmentation error. Segmentation error are usually related to memory. That means our programming is using a lot of memory. I can tell because the recursion is going till maybe 10 raised to the power 6 and it is going to exhaust all the memory. If it not taking that much time, it will at least taking a lot of memory. You can see here because there is a memory limit KB and it is going till the upper limit, right? So all these numbers are going on the top 23 3 6 whatever that limit is, and these two cases are using lower memory, but it is taking a lot of time because we haven't used any caching mechanism. Let's add a caching mechanism here. So as before, just create a table. No, this time yeah. So one of the thing about Python is like your list doesn't have to be homogeneous. It can be it can have different types of variable in that list. So what I usually do is like create a integer list here, and whatever this value is, I'll copy here. So that will be the size of our table. But we are going to store the Boolean values here. We are going to just perform a check here. If table. So as before, I'm just after base condition, I'm performing a check whether table n. So whether it is not equal to -1 or not. If it is not equal to -1, that means this value has been calculated already. Just return this value. table, we are returning this value, and if it is not calculated yet, that means you need to calculate this value and store it in table n. So you are calculating this value here, storing. So if you can see, I'm following the same structure as I followed before. I calculated the value and then I return this value. Okay, let's see if it is runs right now. Okay, so we got solution accepted for these two. There were time limit exceedation, right? It was taking more than 10 seconds. 10 seconds was our limit. So it is taking less time now, but still it is running into say runtime error. It is still using memory. It is still using a lot of memory because it is taking like a lot of recursion depth. It is going into too much depth. So this is a problem with memorization. Basically, I picked up this problem to tell you that in some problems there could be a limit on memory, and at that time you can run into some problems if you are using memorization. But you can easily convert this more memorization into tabulation. What I'll do is just calculate all the values. Okay, see what I'm doing here is I'll just write a loop in range whatever the maximum value here is. Here. So I'll just calculate till this. Okay, I'll call this function using this loop in a sequential manner. This loop, this loop will do is before performing any operation, before even taking input, it will calculate all the values for this table, right? So if you are calling this function on set 20, so all the values before 20 will be calculated, will be in the table. So it will return you the result in only one call. It will once this recursive call gets called only one time, it will directly hit this base condition, one of these two base condition. Either you will find, one of these three base condition. Now this table will become our base condition again, right? So we are basically converting this table checking condition into a base condition. So we already have these two condition, whether it's a panthetic or not, these two condition, and this third condition, that is checking the table, this is going to be hit on the first recursive call. You can just think it through that if you call it by sequence, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So whenever you call a 20th value or 50th value, all the previous value will be calculated there. This is what tabulation is. But instead of using this recursion, you can use a loop also. Like inside this loop, I can just write this whole recursive function in a different manner and make it tabulation. But this is also tabulation. So let's see whether this works or not. Now it's going to take a time because it's going to calculate all the values. Let's see. All the test cases are taking like a lot of time, like 6 seconds, 7 seconds, but it is inside the time limit. And now the input doesn't matter. In our first problem, the time for this was very low, right? Only 0.1 second because the input was smaller for this. I'll show you the input here. So our input was only 1000 numbers, right? So but because we are calling this function for 1 lakh numbers here, this time is taking a lot of time. Like even all the test cases are taking almost 6 seconds. And if you just remove this from here, now you can check their time will be different for each test case. That means it's not calculating the whole table. It is calculating the table only till only what it needs. For this test cases, see the number. What is the number? So there are only 10,000, right? But for these test cases, this higher test cases, the value are higher. Right? The values are starting from 1,000, 10,000 and 1. So for these values, you need to calculate the previous values before, and the recursion depth can go very deep. So if you want to convert a memoization into tabulation easily, you can just add a for loop call for that recursive method. So yeah, so I'm done with the two problems. If anybody has any queries, you can ask me out. Okay, I see some comments here. I'll just read it through. I did not understand if the result is cache, why changing the order of the calculation improves the efficiency is because of the line 11. Okay, let me see what is the line 11. Yeah, so for this third test case, our input was wrong, right? It was a segmentation error. Let's see the first test in here. So the first number is here is 10,001. So what for 10,001, what our program will do? Let's see. So what it will do, it will try to subtract any digit, like it will subtract one, right? It will subtract one because the number is 10,001. So there are only two digits, 0 and 1. So 0, we have already put up a condition that don't go into 0 because you will run into infinite call problem. And for 1, it will just subtract the number 1 and it will call it for 10,000. Then 99,000, like, and it will, the recursion depth will be very higher. Like it will go recursion till it reaches these two condition, right? And these two condition, we don't know when it will reach. It will be very high. When the recursion length could be very high, and that's why it is running into segmentation problem because this compiler doesn't have that much memory, right? Are you getting me? Just think about this, what this loop is doing. Why is it going from sequence to sequence? Like if I reverse this loop, if I want to run this loop from 10 lakh to 1, then I'll run into the same problem, the segmentation problem. I have to go by sequence. That is what tabulation is. You have to use a loop. You have to go from a sequence, like from uh, bottom to top. You have to go from, you have to start at bottom and you have to go to top. This is, you are going from bottom to top. So this is a simple recursive program for Fibonacci sequence. So you can see here that I have defined a function, and then this function takes a number. And in the first statement, you see a base condition that if the n goes below 1, you return n. And for any other number, you just make a recursive call. So I'll explain what is overlapping subproblems here. If you try to draw this tree depending on this recursive calls, it will kind of look like this. You have made a call for Fibonacci sequence 5 that will make a call for 4 and 3 because you need previous two numbers to calculate the current number. For 4, then it will make a recursive call to 3 and 2. Same with the 3, it will make a recursive call to 2 and 1. And the same, it will go till it reaches a base condition. So base condition are the leaf nodes. So you can see that fib1 is a leaf node, fib0 is a leaf node. What I want to focus here is, you can see that fib3 is appearing twice in the tree. So fib5 has two children, fib4 and fib3. Same as fib4 has two children, fib3 and fib2. So this fib3, if it is already calculated in fib4, do you actually need to traverse this whole tree, fib3, on the right side? We actually don't need. We can just cache the intermediate result through some caching mechanism. This is called, this is what called overlapping subproblems. So we have subproblems here. This fib3 is a subproblem, if fib4 is a subproblem, fib2 is a subproblem. You want to solve these problems to get the solution for your current problem. And if there is overlap, then we call it as overlapping subproblem. So this is about the overlapping subproblems. So a problem is said to have optimal substructure if an optimal solution can be constructed from optimal solution of its subproblems. So all the dynamic programming related programs needs to have this property. If you can't construct a solution from its subproblem, then you won't be able to get a solution through dynamic programming. This is not just about dynamic programming, or this is more about like when you want to apply a brute force anywhere, you actually follow this optimal substructure problem. So say you are trying to find a shortest path from start to goal. Let's just say that start node is U and end node is V. So you want to go from start to goal. And then there are some intermediate nodes. These are their intermediate nodes, just call it X. If you want to find the minimum path from start to goal, if this path goes through X, the path from U to X should be shortest and X to V should be shortest. Only then you can combine those two paths and get a shortest path. So here you can see there are three paths here. One, there is a length 5, and then you can calculate the shortest length from there to goal, which will be 20. We are assuming that we already got that length. Same with the another node. There is a 2 length here, middle node, and then it will calculate 25 till goal. Same with this 11 node, and it will calculate 17 from that node till the goal. So you can just add all these paths. So here you will get 25 in this first node. Here you will get 27, and below you will get 28. So minimum of these will be 25. So you will select this path. Same with, I'll explain with this problem here. So this structure here, you will see that fib n-1, fib n-2. This is called the uh, optimal substructure, because you are getting the solution by using only previous two solution. You don't have to search further. You can just use these two solutions to get current solution. Okay, you can just read the problem. Is if you have heard about this problem, this is a common longest common subsequence problem. It's just modification on that. You are given two strings s and p and two integers k1 and k2. You have to find length of the longest common subsequence after performing at most k1 operation on string s and at most k2 operations on string p. In one operation, you can change a character of a string to any alphabet. So you have two string, A, B, C, D is the one string, and D, B, C, A is another string. So longest common subsequence here is B, C, because that sequence is common in the both the string. B comes before C, and there is no other letter that is followed by C that is common in both the string. So B and C you can find common in both the string. So I'll just show you one example. Like if you have A, B, C, D, E, F, and then there is another string like F, then maybe B, then D, then F again. It's just G, and then A, and then C. So what longest common subsequence here? Can anybody guess the length of the longest common subsequence? Yeah, BDF is the longest common subsequence, because this sequence is being followed in both the string. So B comes before D, and D comes before F. That is the longest common subsequence. It is a subsequence. It is not a substring. Focus on that. It should be a sequence. That sequence is what matters here. So if anybody has any doubt on this problem, you can ask me.
Can you please explain what is K1 and K2?
You are allowed to perform K1 and K2 operation on both the strings. So you can perform K1 operations on S string and K2 operation on P string. What are these operations are? You can change at most K1 letters in S and at most K2 letter in P. By changing those letters, you can increase the length of the LCS. So I'll explain here. So say here K1 is 1 and here K1 is 2. So you got LCS of B, D, F here. That is length 3. Now you are allowed one operation on this string, that you can change any letter to any letter. Like you can pick any letter from here and change it to whatever the letter you want. So say you picked up A and you change it to G. So now your longest subsequence has increased to G, B, D, F, right? And the length is also increased to 4. Now you are not allowed to do any operation on this. Similar way, you are allowed to change two characters in this string. So you can change these characters. So
Probably EF. EF. I mean, sorry,
yeah.
EC. No.
So,
EF.
BDDF. So let's just change maybe this D to C, and okay, we just want to increase the length, right? It should be able to get to I think 6.
I understood, Sushant. That's fine.
Yeah.
Got
So
your.
you are allowed to do some operations on this string, and then you can increase the length. So let's just focus on the LCS first, and then we will take care of this K1 and K2. So let's just take a input from the console, a string S, that will be our input, and then another string P, that will be another input, and then we have K1 and K2. So just K1 and K2 is equal to So we'll get the array of 1 and 0, and that will be assigned to k1 and k2. So we got the input here. Now let's just define function L longest common subsequence. Now this is subsequence will take both the string s and p. Then can anybody guess what will be our state variables here? Yeah, index. So how many index we will require for this problem? Start and length. Length, I don't think we will require length because length will be a constant. We should only pass the variable that can change, like index can change, and length is not required in a recursive call. We can calculate the length from the string itself. String will be same. So how many index we will require? I want to know that, because there are two strings. How many index we should require? Yeah. So we'll have two index. Let's just say one index for s and then one index for p. Okay. So these will be two index. So anybody guess what will be the base condition? If string length is 0, yeah, that is kind of correct, but our string will always be constant. Index should be greater than 0. Yeah, index will always be greater than 0 because we will pass 0 and then we'll go in only one direction in increasing way. So what will be the boundary condition? If we complete all the characters in the string, yeah, that is our correct base condition. So say if s I is equal to length of s, or p I is equal to length of p. So if we reach in any string at the end of any string, we should terminate there. Then we can return a 0 because you can't go any further than that. So what will be our optimal substructure here? So in this problem, there will be two conditions here. To find a LCS, you have to match the characters, and depending whether those characters are matching or not, you have to make a recursive call. There will be two different recursive call here, depending on the condition. So I'll write a condition for it will be easier for you. So if s of si is equal to p of p. So if these characters are matching, that means you got a matching character in both the string. That means you should increase the length of your longest common subsequence. So whatever the recursive call you are going to make here, you need to add a 1, right? And then there will be some another condition that it didn't got match. So that means you can't increase your count. You can't increase your LCS count, but you still have to make recursive call on both the strings. So I'll explain here. So what you will return is, you will make a recursive call here. Will pass the strings as it is. Now you got a matching character. So what should I do with both the index? Let me know. What should I do with these index? Should I pass it as it is, or should I perform some operation on this? Yeah, increment. So we should increment this both the index because we got a matching character. So we have incremented, and we need to add 1 to the result. This 1 is your LCS. So you have increased your longest common subsequence by 1 because you got a matching character. You will add 1 in your answer. And what will be these characters are not matching? What will you do then? So you will go in two directions, right? So you have two choices to make here. Either you can move on first string, or you can move on second string. You have two strings. You didn't got any matching character. You can move from first string to second string. So say you have ABCD and you have DBCA. On the first character, you didn't got any match. From A and D, you didn't got any match. So you make two recursive call. On first recursive call, you will increase the index from the first string, you will move to B, and on the second call, you will make a recursive call to this string. You will move from D to B, and in this both the recursive call, wherever you are getting the maximum LCS, because it's called the longest. There is a longest word here, longest common subsequence. It's not just a common subsequence, it's the longest common subsequence. So you have to find out the longest one. That means you have to perform some maximization or minimization operation. Here is the longest, so you will perform a maximization operation. So what you will return is max of two recursive call. So you will make two recursive call here. So LCS, S and P, then SI, PI. We'll make the same recursive call again. Just the change will be the index variable that you are incrementing. So in one call, you will increment SI, and in one call, you will increment PI. So the tree will kind of look like a binary tree, not a complete binary tree. It will be binary tree. There will be two nodes to some tree, and there will be one node to some tree. Whenever we are getting matching character, the tree will only have one child node, and when there are no matching characters, the tree will have two child nodes. So I guess this will work here. Now let's just get this value. Let's store it in the answer. LCS of S P. For the starting index, we'll pass 0 because we'll start from 0 in the both the string. So we got the answer. Now what we need to do about this K1 and K2, this will be nothing but you can perform some optimal operation on both the string such that you can increase the length of the LCS. It's nothing but that. This K1 and K2, it's nothing but you can increase the length of LCS. So our final answer should be addition of this K1 and K2. So we got our LCS. Now what a problem can be here is there could be like two strings. There could be say A, B, C, D, and there could be another string A, B, C, D. So here the LCS will be 4. You can't increase the LCS from that because the length of the string is itself 4, and you are still allowed to do operations like you can do two operations here and two operations here, but you can't increase the LCS here because the longest string here is length is 4. Here you won't be able to increase the length of the LCS. So what we will do is our final answer will be minimum of length of S, length of P, and our answer we got in by calculating this LCS. Because even though you are allowed to perform any number of operation on the string, you can't increase the LCS by length of the shortest string here, right? Say if you got only A here, and you are allowed to perform like 10 operation on A, but what will you do with those operations? It won't be able to increase the LCS by 1 because the LCS will always be 1 because there is only one character in this string, so LCS will be 1. It doesn't matter how many operations you do. The operations only allow you to change any character. It doesn't allow you to add any character or delete any character from the strings. So that is why I have added this condition. Otherwise, you can just print this answer here, LCS of this. Let's see if we get correct answer here. So you always have to tweak your code a little bit depending on the problem. So this is one example. You won't be getting like exact classic algorithm based problem. You will have some modification on that. Or we are getting some runtime error. So yeah, we got correct answer here, 3. Why we got 3 here? Can anybody guess? Even though the length is only 2 here, because we are allowed to perform one operation. You can just add that operation into the length of 2 and get minimum of the length of this, and whatever the answer you have. I'll just submit this. We still haven't used any caching mechanism. Let's just see how many correct results we are going to get. Yeah, we got one result here. I guess these are like smaller strings. That's why we got correct result here. And we are getting time limit exceeded, obviously. So now we are going to use any caching mechanism. I'll define a table. This will be a 2-dimensional table because we have 2 state variable here. So there is one index for first string, and then there is another index for second string. So our table has to be a 2-index table. That means it has to be double dimensional. So let's just initiate this table with -1. The maximum length it is going till 500. So let's just define with 501. So this is our double dimensional table, and it is 501 by 501 matrix, and it is filled with -1. So after our base condition, we are just going to check whether the matrix had been already filled or not. If table S I and T I, if it is not equal to -1, that means this entry has been filled, then return this entry. Right? And what here you will do, if this condition isn't get triggered, you have to calculate this value, right? So instead of returning, we'll just assign the value here and then return. So I always find it easy to implement a brute force solution first and then apply caching mechanism so that your code doesn't get complicated much, and then we'll return. There was what is missing here? There is one bracket missing here. Yeah, so it has been solved. So you can see that in some cases it is using larger memory than other test cases. These are just test cases where it has to make a lot of recursive call. That means the string must be longer here. You can even see those strings, how long those strings are. It is opening in notebook. So yeah, it's longer string. Okay, let's just move on to second problem. You can find all my submission on this link. I'll share these links. So I'll just read the problem for you. You are working at a cash counter, fun fair, and you have different types of coin available to you in an infinite quantities. So I'll like to emphasize here, there is given that all the coins are available for infinite quantity. That means you can use any coin as much time as you want. The value of each coin is already given. Can you determine the number of ways of making a change for a particular number of units using given types of a coin? For example, if you have 4 types of coin and the value of each is given 8, 3, 1, 2. So like we have in India, we have coins of 1, 2, 5, and 10. They are giving some different coins. You have 8, 3, 1, 2. You can make changes for 3 units in 3 ways. So you can either have 3 of one coin, you can have 1 of one coin and 1 of 2 coin, and then there will be a 3 rupees coin. So the problem starts here. So n is an integer, the amount to make a change for, and C as an array of integer representing the available denominations. So they will give you this list and this a unit, and you have to find the number of ways you can make this unit by using these coins. So can anybody guess this problem is similar to which problem, which classic problem in dynamic programming? Subsets. Yeah, actually, yeah, subset, but there is one name for that problem. Have you heard of the knapsack problem? So this is a variation of actually the knapsack problem. You are allowed to put some coins in your bag and you have to fill that bag completely. So our input will be, I'll show you the input here directly on the sample input. So here the input is 4 and 3. So 4 is the change you want to make, and you have 3 coins, and those coins are 1, 2, 3. So how many ways are there to make a change of 4? So there are actually 4 ways. So one way is this, 4 coins of 1 rupees, then 2 coins of 1 rupees and 1 coin of 2 rupees, then 2 coins of 2 rupees and 1 coin of 1 rupees and 3 rupees. So these are the 4 ways to make a change of 4 using these coins. So let's just take these input. So what is they are calling it? This is n is the number of units, m is the number of coin types. And map. So we got n and m, then we will have C, the coins, the list of coins. This will be same. So we got n and m and then list of coins. Now we will start writing recursive function here. Def make change. Now which variables we are going to pass into this recursive function? We will obviously need C because list of the coins. Which other variables we are going to need? Can anybody guess? Unit. We obviously need units. So let's pass n here, and so we are definitely going to change this n throughout the calls, but we will need another variable. What will be that variable? There is a list involved here. If the list is involved in a recursive call, there will always be an index variable for that list. Let that be I. Okay, let's see. So what we are going to do is, at each call, we are going to subtract coin value from our sum. Our sum is n, that is the units we are going to make, and whenever that will be 0, we are going to count it as one way of making that change. If it is going in negative territory, it can't come back. So let's just put that base definition here. So if n becomes less than 0, that won't be a way to make a change. So we won't count it as a way to make a change. So we'll return a 0 here. Then if n becomes 0, right? In that case, okay, there will be another base condition. It clearly involves this index variable. So this index variable can go out of range. So we will have another base condition for that. If I is equal to length of C. These are coins. This is n is the sum and I is the index variable. So if I goes out of range, then there is no way to make a change. We don't have any coin left, so let's just return a 0. We are only going to return 1 in only one case, when our sum will return 0. That means we got exact units to make that change. So if our sum has become 0, that means we have got exact coins to make that change. So we'll return 1 here. So we got the base condition clear. There is one condition for negative territory, there is one condition for out of range, and then one positive condition when we reach our destination. So this is our leaf node. N is equal to 0 is our leaf node. So what we are going to do here is return you have to make two recursive call, right? So one, you are going to use that unit, and in another call you are not going to use that unit. So same as knapsack, either you are going to take that item into your bag, or either you are not going to take that item in your bag. So you have to explore all these two paths in your tree. So each node will have two paths. Either you are taking that coin or you are not taking that coin. If you have took that coin, then what you are going to do is you are going to make a change. You're going to make a change with C. Let's say, let's assume that we have took that coin. If you have took that coin, let's just subtract C of I from our sum and make that call again. Okay, because in the next call, you maybe want to use the same coin again, so you don't need to go further than that coin. So this is one way of making change. We'll add with another way of making a change. So another way is making a change is you are not taking that coin, so you won't touch the sum. You will keep the sum as it is. Instead, you are going to move to the next coin. Right? These are the two ways of exploring the tree. And in the end, you have to sum these both ways, because both of these way can reach to leaf node. So this leaf node will return 1. If both of these paths reach to leaf node, it will get added and we'll get the number of ways to make a change. So let's just try to print whether this value is correct or not. Make change. We have C here, we have N here, and we'll start from the 0, the first coin. There will be always an error if length returns. Map doesn't has no length. Yeah, we need to cast it into the list. So we got our output here. The program seems to be correct, but we haven't added any caching mechanism. That's why it's giving result for lower input. But if I submit the code, it won't give you result for the higher input. So we are going to make another caching mechanism. Let's call it a table here. Now, what I want to focus on here is it will be obviously a two-dimensional table because we have two variables that are changing. So sum is changing, also index is changing. So how many variables are changing in the recursive function, that will define your dimension of the table. Now the thing here is this one is the index, so this will be always bounded by some range, but the sum is not bounded by anything here, right? So can anybody suggest any data structure for that? Because you won't be able to use array here, obviously, because array is based on index, and index has to be bounded by some limit. We should use a hash-based data structure here. In Python, there is a data structure called dictionary, which is hash-based. In Java, there is maps. So let's see. Let's create a double dimension table here, and then we can modify it to a dictionary. Let's just see whether we will be able to solve the problem or not. So ranges given here is very low. So let's just keep it 1001. So after these base condition, just check whether the table has been filled or not. If table n I is not equal to -1, then return. So you should be able to choose the data structure depending on the problem. Now we can see in the problem the ranges are not that high. We can still use array-based data structure. That's why we are using array-based data structure. But if the ranges are too high, you should be able to use some hash-based data structure like maps or dictionary. Yeah, it is working. So all the test cases has been passed. Let's just try to see whether we can complete this problem using some dictionary-based data structure. Okay, let's just make it a dictionary now. So in Python, you access a dictionary by a key, and you will get a value similar to what is everywhere in C++. In Java, there is also hash-based data structure, map-based data structure. So what will be the condition here is you have to check if an in table keys or not. So if that key exists, then we have to check whether the I in table and dot. That means both the keys exist. We have two keys. One is n, and this didn't need to be used as a keys, but let's just use it as a keys for now. So we are going to make a double dimensional dictionary. So it will be like hash inside a hash or map inside a map. So if both the keys exist, then you will return table n I. Else, if you don't have that key, then we will have this statement. This is the indexing dictionary is similar to what it is in array. Okay. And if n is not in the table, then we'll still have are still going to make the same. Maybe there is some way to optimize this if else condition. Keys. In this else, actually, you have to, I think, make a dictionary first. Table n has to be a dictionary. Yeah. So yes, you can use a dictionary-based data structure to solve this problem also.
Hey Sushant,
Yeah.
you guys decide.
Yeah.
I follow the process how we can solve the dynamic problems.
Sure.
I have one question. Can you explain how we fill this table, like caching table? Maybe one iteration you can say. Let's
Okay. Yeah. You want to go through? Yeah. Iteration.
I equals to 0. It's like pseudocode. Don't
Yeah.
run. Just do it by yourself. How my table is filled up.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. What I can do here is like print this table. Let's see how this table looks at each recursive call. So at the first call, the table was empty. Then it got built with only one key as a 4, but the dictionary inside a dictionary is still empty. So it will keep on building the empty dictionary till it gets all these coins. And I think these are the I don't know why these are coming as similar call, but these are the same calls that is happening from different branches of the tree, because there will be overlapping subproblem. That's why you are getting this repeated. And once it goes further into the tree, you will see that dictionary inside a dictionary is getting filled. So this dictionary is getting filled inside this. You will see multiple calls, but those are the overlapping subproblems. Whenever there is overlapping subproblem, this condition is going to get triggered, and we are printing it before that. If I print this table after this condition, say before returning this, there won't be repetition. I think so. Won't be able to see any repetition here. So you don't see any repetition now. Every call modifies the dictionary and changes it somehow.
Yeah, Sushant, it's making sense to me.
Yeah. So that I will like to end this session. If you have any doubt, I'll be still waiting for 1 or 2 minutes.
How to think in a way that the given problem is a DP problem?
Yeah, that is actually kind of confusing. Archana. Actually, sometimes I am not able to see whether the problem is DP or whether it can be solved with some another way. But most of the time, you can see that if the problem is saying like maximize something or minimize something, usually if there is maximization or minimization involved, it is a DP problem.
Okay.
Once you do enough practice, you will be able to see that once you read the problem, you will get that which classical algorithm it falls into. You can even guess that which problem does it falls into, whether it is related to knapsack problem or whether it is related to LCS problem. Once you, is the key is here to do a lot of practice.
Practice. Okay.
Yeah.